Okay, I'd like to take some time to tell you about some of the key terms that will be on your exam. You know, you have the key terms list available to you and you should be studying them, right? Okay, so I'm going to go over a few of them and talk about them. Let's talk about mass customization. Customers want products that they want what they want, right? And so customization makes it so customers can have the products geared for them. It might be things like putting their name on it, or it might be something like even making Cubs merchandise versus Sox merchandise versus Cardinals merchandise, that kind of thing. That's customization, where you're making something so that it's specifically geared toward individual customers, okay? There's different types of utility on products as well. Think of the term utility as meaning usefulness, like the laundry sink in your basement is usually called a utility sink, or in your laundry room. It's there because it's useful there. So for products to be useful or to make it better more convenient for customers, you want to have products available at the right place, at the right time, and even in the form that they need. So for example, when it comes to lawnmowers, let's say a customer might be someone who doesn't want to deal with a gas can. They would rather have a battery operated lawnmower, or they might want one that they can plug in, an electric lawnmower. But if we only had electric lawnmowers for sale, that's not going to be useful for somebody whose yard is 100 feet away from the lawnmower, the place to plug it in. Okay, so that's utility, utility of form, making something in the right form for a customer. Utility of time is making something available at the right time. For example, Valentine's it's for sale in stores, the first couple of weeks of February, but not available in November because nobody needs it then. It wouldn't be useful then. You also wouldn't sell any, right? But the utility of possession refers to making it easy for somebody to buy something. So that includes credit cards, maybe coupons would be in there, giving somebody 6 months free financing or whatever. That's the utility of possession, making it easy for them to possess something. We'll talk a little bit about the balance of trade. Balance of trade, think of the term balance, making it even, right? So importing things is bringing things in from another country. Exporting it, sending it out of our country to another country for sale. So you want them to be, actually it's preferable to be selling more, right? Just having things go out to other countries. But if imports that you bring in from other countries is worth more than the exports you're sending out, you're going to be losing money eventually. And that's considered an unfavorable balance of trade. Okay, you want them to be balanced, or you actually want to be exporting more. Sometimes sometimes businesses choose to they outsource their like, let's say a phone center. Have you ever had to call a company about a bill, and you could tell you're talking to somebody from another country, or you call businesses.com and same thing, and you might not even notice that it's happening, but you might be talking to somebody from another country because it's cheaper for a business maybe to hire somebody from outside of our country to do those things. That's called offshore outsourcing. Outsourcing is, well, you could outsource something to somebody in the next town. Of course, outsourcing is just having somebody do something that is not within your company. So whenever you're outsourcing, you're having somebody from somewhere else outside of your business do some work. But offshore is where you're having it in another country. Okay. Comparative advantage. When you have when you're comparing two things together, comparative, you look at the pros and cons of something, right? Let's talk about, for example, the comparative advantage that one country might have over another as far as producing something. I don't know why Cuban cigars comes to mind, but Cuba exports cigars. So they have a comparative advantage, I guess, because nobody else could have Cuban cigars if you aren't in Cuba. And actually, that might be a good time to also mention quotas, because sometimes countries impose quotas and say that you can only import a certain amount of a product or the certain value of a product. And somewhere along the line, I don't know if Cuban cigars are still in that category, but that would be an import quota. You can only import a certain amount of goods from a country. But something like coffee, for example, you cannot grow that in the United States. You can't grow coffee. Brazil grows a lot of coffee. So Brazil has what would be called a comparative advantage. They have an advantage compared to us as far as selling coffee. You know what importing and exporting, we just talked about that. Importing, bringing it into a country, exporting is sending it out of your country. If you are in a business that operates in several countries, that's called a multinational corporation. That's not a surprise to you, I don't think. Multinational, more than one nation. Now, that's for companies that have a physical presence in another country or more than one other country, multinational. If you are a manufacturer and you are making something, sometimes things are made on a conveyor belt. And so it starts here and the product moves to the next spot, it gets painted, it moves to the next spot, it gets screwed together or whatever on a conveyor belt. But if a product is really, really big, or let's say for whatever reason, you can't move it around or a service can't be moved around. I think your textbook gives an example of having something, work done on your house, for example. That has to be done in one spot. That's called a fixed position. Computer aided designs. When a computer puts something, and actually a CAD, computer aided design, you'll see it's a software, and you can actually put something on the screen and get a visual. You could turn it several different directions and see what it's going to look like. And you can modify your design at that time, just tweak it with the mouse and get an idea of what it's like. We've talked a little bit about franchising and franchisor. The franchisor, think of that as up here, franchisor, the franchisee. The franchisor is the one that original owner of a business. For example, the original McDonald's, well, they weren't McDonald's. I forget what the names were, Ray Kroc, whatever those guys. No, the McDonald's. But anyway, so they owned the original restaurant, and they decided let's make more of them. We will license our name or give people permission to use our model and all that. And so that's the franchisor, and the franchisee is the one that owns the franchise. And the franchisee will pay the franchisor thousands of dollars for permission to use the name, the business model and everything. And there are advantages for both. For example, if you are the franchisor, that helps with cash flow for operations, because somebody is giving you $10,000, $50,000 or whatever, either upfront or on a regular basis, for the permission to use the name and the brand and the model and all that. And so that helps you have more money to be able to expand your business or whatever. There are disadvantages to franchising for the franchisor. One being that the franchisee, if they do something stupid, they could, I guess there could be there's a lack of control over those people. If they do something stupid, they could, ruin your name or whatever. Probably lose their franchise, I guess, for that. It would be like a contract, breach of contract or something. But anyway, there are benefits to franchising your company As the franchisor, first of all, it expands your business. You're making more money. That's that cash flow thing going on. But you also don't have you don't really can't control on a day-to-day basis what's going on in that restaurant, that the franchise. And if you are the franchisee, you also have a little bit of lack of control because you cannot change things. You have to follow the model that the franchisor has set. For example, if you were to run a McDonald's store, you can't decide, I'm tired of Big Macs. I think I'm going to try something different. You just can't do that. Okay. Capitalism versus socialism. Capitalism, and we live in a capitalistic country. In capitalism, individuals are allowed to own the business. In a socialistic model, they are not. And the name Adam Smith might come up. Maybe you've heard of or remember reading about the economist Adam Smith. He came up with the theory of the invisible hand that kind of runs the marketplace. And when prices are high, you can set your own prices. If you set the prices too high, people aren't going to buy them. All that play interacts with each other. That's Adam Smith's invisible hand. And so think of Adam Smith, think of capitalism. The market price of a product is when the amount of that product that is the demand of the product by the consumer. If the demand equals the quantity supply, that's called the market price. And obviously it's kind of tricky because to set up a price, you can't say, I'm going to charge this much money for my coffee cup or whatever that I'm making. You can't just say that because then nobody will buy your product. You have to look into what the demand is, what the cost is. And like I said, if you set your product price too high, people won't buy it. But if you set your product too low, you won't make any money and you won't have enough money to continue making your product. Factors of production. Those are all the things that go into producing a product, making a product to create wealth. So you think of things like not only the material, let's go back to my mug right here, the Morton Arboretum mug. The materials that went into making that mug, but also the labor that it took to make those mugs, the capital, the money involved to supply the labor and the products and the assets like the manufacturing plant that it's made in. You need people to make those products, the entrepreneurs that are willing to take a risk and make a product and try to sell it, and all the resources. Those are all factors of production. And they all together are combined to create wealth for somebody. Okay. Cultural diversity refers to the differences among people in the workforce. It's not necessarily just different, not necessarily different countries, different parts of the country, different ways of people looking at things. Cultural diversity. Okay, right now we are going through, I don't know if it's it might be at this point, or definitely a recession. But you might have noticed that stock market goes up and down on a fairly regular basis. Nobody's really surprised when that happens. If you're in finance, you know that that's going to happen, and if you also know that eventually that's going to go back up. So that's considered the business cycle. The business cycle, the economy of a country fluctuates. It goes up and down, up and down. And there are things that factor into that. For example, presidential elections usually have an effect on that. Wars have an effect on that. COVID definitely had an effect on that. But that's considered to be expected. That's the business cycle. It comes and goes, comes and goes. I did send you guys an announcement one time with a funny little video clip of the song about Sarbanes-Oxley. Sarbanes-Oxley was created in a law that was created in 2002, I think, early 2000s, to make a checks and balances for accounting purposes for companies. So, so one hand, well, just, yeah, checks and balances, that's all it could say. So that if the chief executive officer, the CEO of a company, can't do something without the chief financial officer checking on it, or there's, I think, a provision in there that says you cannot do two different financial functions for a business, for the same business. You can't be the one that does their accounting and also the one who does, oh, I don't know, I'm not giving a good example. But anyway, Sarbanes-Oxley just say it's checks and balances for accounting, for financial reports. Okay, I talked about the socioeconomic model already, but just to remember, socioeconomic, social, and economy of a business. It's the balance of the two. And so some of my kids are very into the fair trade. Like, I don't know if you realize this, but some chocolate is produced, chocolate and coffee, both produced in other countries that have a comparative advantage over other countries with that, because you can't grow chocolate anywhere either, not just anywhere. But in some countries, they are produced unethically by people who are not provided a fair wage, or with an unhealthy environment, overworked, that kind of thing. And so the fair trade is are companies who agree to treat people fairly. So that would be part of the socioeconomic model, social responsibility. What do we as a business owe the society that we live in to treat them well and to be a good company for the good of all? Okay. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, was created by Congress. It looks into discrimination and the ability for an employee to sue the company that he works for if need be. Consumerism is protects the rights of consumers, and that makes sense. The term consumerism, think consumerism. If you have a chance, and if this is confusing for you, you might want to look into the different forms of business ownership again, because that will come up. And especially, I know a lot of you are interested in maybe starting a business. A sole proprietor, and I'll make sure I add another video to that key terms or to the things to help you in this class. Maybe I should just do that. But just remember, a sole proprietor is not just the only person that owns a business. You can be a sole proprietorship. If you are a sole proprietor of a business and you have a sole proprietorship, that means you're liable for everything that could happen. And if you are a sole proprietor that, say, is a tree trimming company, and you are cutting down a tree for a customer, and the tree falls on the house, the whole house is destroyed, there's a good likelihood that the customer is going to sue you, right? But if you are a sole proprietor and you're not incorporated, you will have that entire responsibility, and then that customer could take, your house could be taken from you to pay for that liability. It doesn't take much to incorporate, and if you incorporate, your liability is lessened. Okay, and so that's one of the disadvantages of being a sole proprietor is that unlimited liability that you have. You're liable for everything. Now, you can be the sole owner of a business and still be incorporated. So don't think that you have to have others with you to be incorporated. Okay. If you are a limited partner of a business, that means all you've done is invest finances, but you don't have management responsibility or anything like that, other than what you have invested. So if you've invested $25,000 and the business goes under, you've lost your $25,000. but you don't have any liability for losses beyond that. Okay. We'll talk about stock for a little bit. If you own a business, and let's say you have different people, maybe family members all sharing in the ownership of the company. You would say you have shares in that. But if you have no shares outside that, you don't sell stock to the general public, that's considered a closed corporation. When you first if you decide that you want to put your stock out there, or you want to make your company go public and you want to sell stock to the general public, that's considered an IPO, initial public offering. That's the first time you put it out there on the market for other people to buy, is the IPO, initial public offering. And until then, if it's not sold to the public, that is a closed corporation. Okay. So a little bit about the chain of command. If the chain of command goes directly from one person down to the other, that's the line structure. Easy enough to figure that out, right? Remember the little video clip about domestic and foreign corporations. Domestic is within the state. In all other states where it does business, it's foreign. It doesn't mean foreign country. It just means outside of that state. Domestic is within the state. Foreign is other states, or it could also be in other countries too then. Convenience products are products that people buy often, and they want them to be easily available. That's a convenience product, right? It's convenient. They want it convenient. I might have covered this before, the life cycle of a product. A product is first introduced, and then it grows, and then it becomes at its peak, and then in decline. So something like, what would be a good example right now? I don't know. I think I might have mentioned the fidget spinners. Usually when a product is first introduced, it's a new thing and everybody wants it, right? Supply and demand. So when everybody wants it, they will charge more for it, and that's called price skimming. Price skimming. Okay. Break-even quantity is how many of something you have to sell to equal the total cost of sold. Break even, how much you need to just not lose any money, but also you're not making any more. That's the break-even cost. If it costs you $100 to make 5 coffee cups and you sell 5 coffee cups for $100, you broke even. Obviously, you want to do more than that in a business, but you don't want to lose money. You know what a job description is, right? I don't need to tell you. The job description explaining what is required of you as an employee. External and internal recruiting for a job. If you post a job that's available, nobody really does that in newspapers anymore, but let's say you did, that would be external recruiting. If you post flyers on a college campus, external. Career fair at Ivy Tech, external. But if you ask current employees to recommend somebody, that's called internal. That's, again, easily explainable. Let's talk about flex time a little bit. Especially, I think, it's very much a plus for an employee to be allowed a little bit of flex time. Definitely good for moms and dads who have children to get off to school, or whose babysitter is working until 5 o'clock and they need to be home in time. Flex time is when an employer allows you a little bit of flexibility in your starting and stopping time. There might be other things too. They might let you come in certain days of the week. They might say, come in any 4 days you want, as long as you show up and get your work done. And as long as you get your 40 hours in, that's called flex time. I live close to Chicago in Northwest Indiana, and a lot of people here work in Chicago. And if everybody in Chicago all started work at 9 a.m., the interstate would be, it would be packed. It would be a logistic nightmare. Okay, and that is flex time. Did you know that all employers provide unemployment insurance? They pay for unemployment insurance on your behalf, and that's a law that they have to do that. So that way, if you do become unemployed, that's where the money comes from, is for the unemployment insurance that's been contributed on your behalf. Okay, functions of management. Functions of management. Managers do certain there are different parts of their jobs, and like they're part of it is controlling is part of it. The managers do the planning for the business. They might organize the job list of who's doing what. They help train employees, that kind of thing. Those are functions of management. And also, let's talk about management. Managers have skills. Managers have technical skills. Actually, some of them have human resources. I suppose if you're a perfect manager, you would have all of them: technical skills, human resources, decision-making skills, time management, and conceptual skills. Conceptual skills that you have. Think of the term concept. You have an idea in your mind. It's not something that you could see or enact. It's just like a vision. Conceptual skills, being able to imagine things. Those are all skills that managers have or should have. Obviously, different people are better in some than others. I have a manager with no people skills at all, but he's a hardworking guy, that's for sure. I mentioned theory X and theory Y in my last video. Theory X, I always think of the X, do not do this. X is like a negative view of your employees and a negative view of management. But theory X and theory Y, there's more to it than that. It also involves the satisfaction and dissatisfaction of your job. And people that are satisfied with their job are more motivated to do a better job, okay? Let's see. Common stock, just basic stock ownership. When you own stock in a company, it'll refer to as shares. Basically, you own a share of the company. I said in one of my videos, I don't own Home Depot, but I technically do a very, very small amount because I own some stock in Home Depot through an employee stock purchase plan. I think that is all I'm going to talk about at the moment. And if you have any questions about anything specifically, please let me know. And please study those key terms, anything that's in the things to know page of the resources that will help you with your final exam, because I've taken my time to do that for you. And if you have any questions, let me know, okay?